The college football playoff is going to be moving to straight seeding a year earlier than expected, and it's not good for the Utah Utes. I'm going to tell you why on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finance with Monarch Money. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by UteZones Ethan Pierce. Talk a little bit of Utah basketball later, but have to start with college football and the latest. There's so many shakeups right now because the SEC and Big Ten are in control of everything. So just they're constantly trying to shake things up and change everything. And the latest one being they have already taken away the straight seeding. They're going straight to straight seeding. So what that means is last year, 4 highest ranked conference champions got the top 4 seeds no matter what. This year, it will be the 4 best teams. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But I think what sucks is if you're Utah, I think this Utah team still has a chance to be really good. So like, let's say Utah won the Big 12 and they're one of the 4 highest ranked conference champs. They've got a bye. Like, that is massive. Sure, now Utah maybe gets the playoff game at home, but this is the rule change that favors the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's why I think it's bad for Utah. The fact that it's going to be, Ethan, I think Utah almost has to be perfect this year. Like 12-0, maybe 11-1 to get a home, to get that bye now, because it feels like it's just more and more becoming Big Ten SEC invitational.
I mean, that's the way the sport has been trending, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just another step in the long line of things that they've done to kind of, push us in that direction of super conferences and all that sort of deal. You're right. I think it is tough for Utah because the Big 12 doesn't necessarily have that amount of respect nationally. We saw that last season. A lot of people were projecting the conference to be pretty bad. And this year we see that same thing. And whether that's, in comparison to like the SEC and the Big Ten, right? It's a whole deal. But I think that's correct. It's tough for the Utes to have to work harder to get a bye in the first round.
Yeah, it's just the
margin. That's just the reality,
The margin for error just got smaller. Last year, as long as you won your conference and you weren't, like what happened in the Boise State going undefeated, that was massive. And Boise State's athletic director actually tweeted out, like, let's call this the anti-Boise State rule to prevent it from happening. And I agree with him. Like, I think it sucks now that Boise State can't get a first round bye. And say what you want about what ended up happening with Boise State, but hey, they competed with Penn State. They proved they belong. Penn State was just better. And we saw that last year. And I think that's what, once again, what the Big Ten and SEC to me are trying to take away is any given Saturday. What I mean by any given Saturday is any given Saturday, anyone can beat anyone. And some people say that's crazy, but Arizona State was a 4th and 13 away from upsetting Texas. And then this whole talk, which I can't believe we're still doing it, Ethan. The SEC coaches are still at their spring media session, whatever it is, still talking about last year's playoff and how, if these teams played in the SEC, like, they continue to relive the past, which is just insane to me. But they continue to try and talk about this gap. I am not saying that the SEC and some of those Big Ten teams a lot of time won't be favored and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, if you still come out of your conference, you deserve to have the opportunity to have a chance to win here. And you deserve the right to me to still have a chance at one of those top 4 seeds. And yet again, the Big Ten and SEC are just trying to take that away more and more.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that the teams that are, generally good every year want to make it easier for the best teams, the quote-unquote best teams to win, right? We see it, football is an interesting sport, and we see this in the NFL where it's just a one-game thing. There is no playoff series. There is no best of 7. There is no best of 5. It's just whoever is better during that game. But the more that you make things easier and give buys and scheduling advantages to these top seeds, the more likely it is that they're going to be to win. And so the teams with all these, massive amount of stakeholdings in college football as a whole, and these big brands, that's just the way that things have been trending, is to make things easier on the big brands and then harder for the little guys. That's just the direction that college sports in general is trending. So I think this is not a surprise.
It's not a surprise. It's just unfortunate because I know here's what the other thing I think is so interesting, right? Yes, the gap between the top two conferences and everyone else is growing. But once again, that doesn't mean these other teams aren't capable of beating them. Yes, those teams have more 4 and 5 stars. But you know who's also had more than four, 5 stars like frequently? First of all, Texas did back in the Big 12, and they had years where it took them until they finally found a way to break through and win. How about Utah? They didn't always get the top 4 and 5 stars. And what were they doing? Finding ways to beat a USC and an Oregon. So they're just continuing to try and take that away, which I don't like. Jim Phillips said it's good for the competitiveness of the sport that we go back to see that allowing like, hey, the best 4 teams get a bye. And I like that idea in and of itself, but I just know how this is going to play out next year, Ethan. Let's say a Big 12 team is, and this isn't even about Utah exactly, dude. This becomes a bigger college football thing. There's going to be a Big 12 team. Let's say they go 11-1, and then on ESPN, on all these networks, what they're going to say is, well, did they really play a tough schedule? Like, what would they have done in the SEC? What would they have done in the Big 10? It's like, no, like they had a really good year. Like we should still get to reward them and reward that. And I just feel like once again, it's going to be incredibly hard, and it makes me sad too, especially when you're going to have teams like Texas Tech. Like the reason the SEC thinks it just means more bigger, better is because they get the top players. Texas Tech had one of the 3 best portal classes in the country. So you're going to tell me they don't have a roster capable of competing with you guys? That's like, I mean, I'm pulling my hair out at this point.
Yeah, that's just how it goes. That's just how it goes in 2025, my man. Tough scene.
It is. It's incredibly tough, but if you're Utah, you do still get in. I don't want that to be lost in this. If you win your conference, it's going to be hard for any under the current format. It's going to be hard for a Big 12 and ACC team to get 2 in. Last year, the ACC was able to get 2 at SMU and Clemson when they absolutely got it right. They're still talking about that Bama team, how they should have been in, yet they lose their Oklahoma Vandy. Like they lose all these bad games, yet they're still talking about how they should have gotten in. If you're Utah, you still have a path to get in. I think you either have to win the conference or, I mean, even in SMU, right? They were 11-2 and they barely squeezed in. So if you're Utah, you easily have to win double figures in games. And if you lose 2 in the regular, if you go 10-12 and like don't win the conference, you're not getting in. Like based on what's happened, unless a lot of other things happen. So that's what makes this very unfortunate for Utah.
They're just looking for ways to justify letting in like a 3-loss Ohio State, 3-loss Alabama, 2-loss Michigan, like teams like that, right? Like we know who the Blue Bloods are, and every single time at the end of the season, we get into these discussions about, well, this loss wasn't actually that bad, or well, they did beat these teams and their schedule was that much harder. So they're always going to find a way to justify it, and that's just how it goes.
And the more we expand, the more we're just, hey, letting less and less teams in. For me, I wanted expansion, but I wanted 8. Because 8 to me, the last year we had the 14 playoff, we had to leave out Florida State. We had to leave out Georgia. Like those teams are looking like, oh, they've only lost 1 game, or in Florida State's case, they're undefeated. But because of the quarterback injury, I don't know if they're a top 4 team, but they're easily a top 8 team based on what they've done. So that's why I really like the number of 8. But in the end, we were going to 12. Soon we'll be at 14, 16. Matt Rule wants 40. Please let that never happen. But we'll see. It's just insane out there right now. And college football, college sports are right now with the portal and how everything happens. Speaking of the portal, Utah men's basketball has done a lot of work in the transfer portal. We are going to talk about the players they've been able to bring in, what they still might need or try to bring in as well. That's what we'll be talking about in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can just stop just managing your money and start building wealth. They have surprising insights. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. All in one convenience instead of juggling multiple apps. You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Also, that easy collaboration. You can track and share personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress with your partner. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com or for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. And the code is LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for half off your first year with Monarch Money today. The Alex Jensen of the Utah men's basketball era will get underway this late fall, mostly winter, and a little bit into spring. And the roster is really starting to round into form. I mean, it's pretty much done. We haven't had any portal movement here in a little bit. To me, I will say, we can talk about who Utah added in a moment. I would still love if Utah could add one more 5 and one more guard. They do have a roster spot or two that they can use, Ethan, but I'm curious for you. Do you feel like Utah needs to add anything else, or do you feel like this roster is like, okay, it's set and Utah can win with this group?
Yeah, I think that they're still going to be shopping around a little bit. They have a couple of spots left to use. I don't know that I necessarily see a clear need. I think they should more be looking for best player available. I know there's been a lot of talk about them potentially adding another center, and I don't think that would be a bad option, just in terms of like a depth piece, and another guy that you can kind of throw in the mix, because I think that spot is a little bit unsettled as to who's going to be the starter. So I wouldn't be shocked if they went out and added another big man. But other than that, I think they're just kind of looking around and seeing who they think will fit on the roster, regardless of the position, just, who has the most chemistry with the guys they already have.
Who do you think that starting 5 is? Is it Faye right now, the Western Kentucky transfer? Do you think he's the most likely to start here? Is it got like Okonkwo coming over from Akron? Like, how do you make the center position for
really
Utah?
I don't know. I think you could see either of them. I think they're probably going to, in my opinion, or not my opinion, my guess is that it would be Okonkwo at this point. I think that he projects as maybe a little bit more of a polished player, a guy that you can kind of rely on. He's not going to like make any flashy plays or wow you with anything, but more often than not going to make the right play, and a pretty good defender as well, good finisher around the rim. So I think that Okonkwo is kind of going to be in line for that at the moment, but I think they're going to take a good look at the roster once they actually get into training and gearing up for the season and figure it out then. I don't think they're necessarily looking at it as something that's set in stone. It's going to be pretty malleable.
And what's nice for Utah, too, is college basketball is trending towards a little smaller, a little more athletic. And Utah had a guy like Lawson Lovering last year, was a more traditional center. And at times, there were teams who were just on the floor, a lot more athletic, like able to get up and down, guys in transition, able to produce things. And I think that's the first thing. You can even just say that overall about this roster, Ethan. They are so much more athletic than they were last year. The guards able to score off the dribble, I think, is a team that the post presence inside. You got a guy like Ezra Asar who can get a bucket a little bit, but you have guys who can play more above the rim this year than last. And I do think in a conference like the Big 12, getting more athletic was something this team had to absolutely do. And they've done that based on the roster that Alex Jensen's built so far.
Yeah, and I think that was a focus for Alex Jensen heading into the offseason. I think that was really what he wanted to try to go out and do, is add a bunch of athleticism and guys that they feel like can play fast, but not only play fast, play decisively, and can really attack in transition. Because I think that's what makes a good basketball team, is a team that can really exploit mistakes from opponents on both sides of the ball. So if you can get a turnover, get out and run, and get an easy bucket in like a 3-on-2 situation, stuff like that. And, especially making good plays on the defensive end can lead to a quick basket on the other end as well. So I think that's really what they're looking to do here. And especially with guys like, Don McHenry, Terrence Brown, and Elijah Moore, Choppa Moore at that guard spot. I think all three of those guys have that athletic track record and can really slot in as kind of dynamic two-way guards. And that's kind of what they're hoping to build.
And that's what they need to build to. They want to take that next step in this conference. I know they got to, I don't remember where exactly they finished. They were 10th at one point, we know. I don't know if they finished there, maybe 11th either way. But like last year's roster in some ways even overperformed. It would be great if this team could be like, even if they finished 10th or 8th or 9th, and you're like, oh, they could have been even better. And it's like just a positive step in the right direction for this Utah team. I think that's what you're hoping for overall. And there are a lot of good pieces on this roster. I mean, pieces that I'm excited about. I think the number one that I'm most intrigued by, I was talking about this with a guest not long ago, Ethan. Some teams that you look at and it's like, okay, who's the X factor? It's hard to figure it out. I think it's absolutely, when you look at this Utah men's basketball team, Jahki Howard, I think he has to be the X factor. The 6'6" forward from Auburn, he was incredibly talented, produced for Auburn last year at times, but there was a lot of off the court stuff that led to his role kind of diminishing. To me, if they can get Jahki in, and if they can, if Jahki can become the best player that he can be and avoid some of the off the court stuff, there was fights on planes and some teammate stuff and other things. If he can figure that stuff out, that raises the entire ceiling of this Utah team to me.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I think Howard is going to be a guy they were really excited about getting him, getting a guy in there that they feel like is still young and has a lot of potential, and maybe with the right staff and team around him could really shine. So I think that's a good one. I also think, something that not a lot of people are talking about is how it really does seem like they're building around Keanu Dawes, and how much this can open up his game with a different team around him, because at the guard spot last year, they had a guy like Miro Little who did a lot of good things, but ultimately a pretty disappointing season from him last year. And then you were running with Madsen's brother Mason, and a couple of other guards that weren't necessarily that like dynamic offensive presence that can really make plays for themselves and others. And I think Dawes is a guy that really knows where to be on the court, and with a good point guard can really, really thrive. So I'm excited to see how he looks next to a guy like Terrence Brown or Don McHenry, or perhaps both of them on the court with Dawes together. I think is going to be really interesting to see. So that's going to be, I don't know if that's an X factor, but something to look out for is just what kind of growth Keanu Dawes can make and how much this roster is better fit around him.
I totally agree. I mean, the way he closed the season, didn't he have a double-double in the final game of the Crown?
I
want to say
he did, yeah.
Like 19 and 10 or something like that?
Tournament game as well. Maybe not a double-double, but a very good game in the tournament game as well. I think it was a double-double in the Crown. And he also played well against BYU in the regular season finale. So good close to the season for Dawes. And he has a lot of runway to really make a big impact next season.
The fact that Utah was able to bring him back was massive. When you have so much turnover in college basketball, I mean, Baylor lost like their entire roster. I think it's just crazy what's going on. Utah lost almost all of their roster, but to get a guy back is something that I think is definitely big too. We've talked about a few guys now. I think another one we're talking about is Elijah Moore. I mean, a 4-star, 6'4", 176. He had that one early game for Syracuse and then kind of fizzled out after that, but was just a freshman last year too. I think he's another guy, Ethan, I look at like, okay, if he can come in and maximize the potential, you see guys make that freshman to sophomore year leap, we could be talking about one of the guy who has a chance to be a really good Big 12 guard, which obviously is saying a lot with the level of guards in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I like his potential as a shooter. I think that he, right now, I think he projects more of an off-ball kind of role rather than like a true point guard. I think I see him more as a 2. But maybe they see something else. Former 4-star recruit. They can develop ball skills still. These guys are still young, so I think there is a lot of potential with Chapa for sure.
There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential with this lineup. We are still several months away from the season, but right now, what would be your starting lineup?
I think we're probably going to see Terrence Brown and Don McHenry as the guards. We'll probably see Keanu Dawes definitely is going to start, whether it's the 3 or the 4, it doesn't really matter. I'd look out for Seydou Traore to potentially snag one of those
Iowa transfer
spots. And then at center, like we talked about earlier, I'm going with Okonkwo right now. But outside shot for EB Traore as well. We'll see how healthy he is. But he's a guy that they really like too, so we'll see. Yeah,
there's a lot of guys on here I think have a chance. I mean, even at the guard spot, like I would go with Don and Elijah right now. It's early, and we got to see that's a very interesting. If you're just talking about college sports in general, you have a guy in Terrence Brown who scored over 20 with FDU versus Elijah Moore, who had a 20-point game with Syracuse, we mentioned, but then didn't do a lot. So how does the jump in competition for Brown and then for Brown and then Moore for him, how does that work with him trying to take a large role? I'm very curious to see that. I do agree that Don's going to be starting guard. We both are 1,000% lockstep that Keanu Dawes is going to be the guy. And then the other spots I find very intriguing. Is it going to be a guy like, I do think Jahki Howard, I think he's going to start. I just think he's so talented. I think he's going to start early. Does he end the season in that role? We'll see what happens. And then I think Faye has a chance as well to be another guy for this team in the front court too. But there's lots of options, and hopefully these guys, iron sharpens iron, and another guy, you already mentioned him too, but the fact that you have a guy in Traore who has that Big Ten experience, I think is a big thing. He played a lot for Iowa this last season too, so I think that's a big deal for the squad, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the Utah men's basketball program looks like come the 25-26 season. One thing we are definitely hoping under Alex Jensen is this Utah team has more success and thus puts more Utah basketball players into the NBA. It's really been a long time since the Utah guy has been drafted. Exactly how long? Very well may surprise you. We're going to talk about that in one moment. Ethan Pierce back with me here. Ethan, who was the last Utah men's basketball player to be drafted?
I believe that would be Kyle Kuzma in 2017.
It was.
He would have been drafted, but that was 27th overall, I want to say, to Brooklyn, which then traded the pick to the Lakers in a deal for Brook Lopez.
That was very impressive. That is dead right, all of that.
NBA brain right here.
I love it. But yeah, it was him. You had Pirtle in 16, and then you had Wright in 15. So it was cool. You had 3 years in a row. Now, granted, but prior to that, you had to go all the way back to 2005 till Utah had a draft pick. And in the 90s, Utah had several, which was really cool. But yeah, outside of those 3 years in a row, Wright, Pirtle, and Kuz, it was quiet. It's been cricket since, which for a second, for some reason, when I first started to do the research earlier, I was like, didn't Brandon Carlson get drafted? I was like, no. I mean, shout out Brandon Carlson, by the way, going to the NBA Finals. I don't know how. I don't know. Has he been on the bench? I'm trying to remember. Has he been on the bench?
He's been on the bench. I believe he is. He got promoted off the two-way. I think he's on a standard contract, so he is eligible to check into a game. Obviously, OKC stacked, so he wouldn't be seeing the court unless it's a blowout. But yeah, excited to see him have a chance to compete for a ring. So that's gonna.
They're doing a number on my Timberwolves right now, so he might have actually gotten in the game. And by the time we're recording this video, how cool is that Brandon Carlson might have a chance to win a ring is something that would be incredibly exciting. But for this Utah team, I do feel like you want to get. If you want to get back to the forefront of college basketball, it would be great if Utah could start putting more guys into the pros. It's crazy that, and hey, shout out to Wright, Pirtle, and Kuz for all still being in the NBA in an era where a lot of guys have a couple years and then kind of fizzle out. Like, it's cool that you still have all these guys in the league, but it's way past time that Utah starts to put some more guys in the NBA, especially with what BYU is starting to do now. Utah's not going to have a top 10 pick like Dumbonsa is going to be next year. But I do think it's a Utah program that I do expect them sometime in the near future too. I expect you to have some guys get drafted. And I think sometime in the next 3 to 4 years, we might see at least one first-round pick come through this school, because I believe in Alex Jensen's ability to develop talent. You got guys like Chilius and the Wes Wilcox, the GM. There's a lot of NBA talent evaluation that Utah possesses. And I think that could lead to big things for this team, bringing in the right pieces that eventually get to the NBA.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's too early to say about anybody on the current roster whether or not they could be an NBA player. Ask me after the season, and I can give you a much better take. All these guys are relatively, young and inexperienced, haven't seen too much of them at the college level, so the jury is still out on that. But I think you're right, especially, the NBA experience thing. A guy like Wes Wilcox in the front office, guy like Rafael Chilius. They made another hire today as well, I believe. Victoria's son.
Yes, they did.
IMG Academy as well. So that's another piece of big experience, and that one's on the recruiting trail. That's a high school, prep school. So, bringing in some NBA experience, I think is going to be huge for them, and they're really running this thing like a pro model, and that's what a lot of teams are moving towards these days, and I think that's really the vision for Alex Jensen and this new staff. So hopefully, fingers crossed that there is a guy on the current team that will end up getting drafted into the NBA within the next 3 or 4 years. I don't know who it will be, but fingers crossed. I could see it with a couple of guys on this team. Like I said, we'll have to, actually watch them play this year, but I think there is potential for a lot of these guys.
There's two interesting things I want to talk to you about with this too. I think let's talk about this one first. Yes, money is still the most important thing to guys, or money has become the most important thing for most athletes. I feel like when it comes to picking their next schools, hey, how much can you get me? But best fit is also very important, probably number 2, or in some ways 1B for certain guys. And some individuals' most important thing is, where can I go to grow, develop? Sure, give me some, but then help me reach the NBA, which is a massive thing. And I think the fact that Utah has so many guys that have seen what it takes to be successful at the NBA level is a massive thing they can pitch recruits on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no question about that. I think guys really resonate with. There's a reason that we see so many former players go on to be coaches. I think that there really is a great relationship that can be built between guys who are currently doing it and guys who have done it before. We see that in every walk of life. So I think that can only be a positive for Utah this year.
Totally agree. And then the last thing I'll bring up is this, Ethan. With NIL playing such a large role and guys having more opportunities to make money and stay in school, so their best opportunity to earn revenue is not going to the NBA and maybe getting drafted, then you go overseas. It's to stay and play. The stat that came up recently was there are less players than ever who declared for the NBA draft this year. A lot of guys are coming back and staying. And I think what's big for Utah is you'll get guys who are willing to stay longer, grow and develop at your school, which will help you not just maximize your program, because in the past there was so little growth and development because you had so many one and done guys, not as much as Utah, but some of the other schools. But I think there's going to be more talented players being willing to stay in school longer. Some of those guys will want to transfer to Utah. Sure, some will transfer away. But I think overall, the way that this is trending, where you have more guys staying, is going to be massive for Utah when you have a strong developmental staff, which we just covered. This team definitely does.
Yeah, I think that's what the NCAA wants, is they want more guys to stay in school for a couple of years, kind of build their name, build a brand, build an identity for certain teams. Because, in March Madness, people always get excited about the veteran teams that have guys that have been there before, done that. Like players that stay in college for a couple of years, even if they don't make it in the NBA, they become kind of legends in their own community, especially if your team is winning. So I think that's what the NCAA wants. It's really marketable. It's good for the sport. So keeping guys in school for a couple of years. And I do also wonder if we'll see the draft eligibility requirements change on the NBA side within the next 5 to 10 years. I think that things that they've talked about lowering it for years, I would not be shocked if they raised the age for guys to go to the draft. We're going to kind of see, but these things are always in a state of flux. So I'm interested to see where we go from here. But in the current setup, yes, I definitely agree with you. I think it's good for the Utes to be able to kind of retain guys, develop them, and hopefully build a program identity and culture that players want to stay at.
You said race. You think there's a chance they might make it, you have to go 2 years to college, or would it be 2 years to college or straight to the pros? Like, how do you think they would do that?
I don't know. I just feel like there's something that could happen there, especially with the way that team building has changed in the NBA. And we're not talking about the NBA right now, but I just think that the way that team building has changed, teams are going to want to start getting guys on rookie contracts that can contribute right away in year 1 or year 2. And that's going to be more experienced players, guys who are ready to go to the NBA and make an impact, rather than 18-year-old project players getting drafted in the top 5 that don't pan out the majority of the time. So I just think that with the way that the NBA is trending, we might see more of an appetite for longer tenured college players, and that could lead to a change being made at the league level. I don't know. Just a theory.
Yeah, and it very well could. And it's just been really interesting to see what's happened with college basketball. This trend, as we mentioned, the fact that a couple of years ago it was like 160 guys declared for the NBA draft. That number this year is like barely over 100. And that'd be even less guys if they were granted that 5th year of eligibility too. So a lot of changes happening that will no doubt affect Utah. And hopefully there's changes within the basketball program that will allow Utah to put more guys into the NBA. It's going to be interesting to watch either way. Ethan, always appreciate making the time to hop on. Please let everyone know where they can find you at.
UteZone.com. We're kind of in the depths of the off season right now for men's basketball, but as the season starts gearing up, you'll start hearing more from me. So UteZone, check it out. Go Utes.
Ethan, you're the man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate you.
He said it best. Go Utes. Appreciate you all for joining us on today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow. We'll talk about the latest in Utah athletics and Utah football.